Greetings, race community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Sally Bryant, who serves as CEO of the Bryant Group and really sits at the intersection of philanthropy, leadership, and talent. And I am so excited to share your journey with our audience. Sally, welcome.
Thank you, Brent. So happy to be here.
Well, before we get into how you keep busy today, I want to go back in time and understand more about your higher education journey. So take me back to St. John High School. Where was that? What were you up to? And what was junior year Sally Bryant thinking about that led you to Washington State University?
St. John High School was a high school of, I think we had a total of 83 people in the four-year high school.
Wow.
And actually in one building was K through 12. So this is a very, very small farming town in Eastern Washington, about an hour from Pullman, so an hour from Washington State. If you look at the Washington State alumni list, my maiden name is Deshane, and you will see the longest list of Deshanes of probably any university, at least in this country. You might find more in Canada. So very small town. Always knew I would go to college. My parents both went to, even though, I mean, they were farmers, but they both had bachelor's degrees from Washington State as well. So that was pretty much knew that's where I was going to go. Did not know what I wanted to do, but always knew that I loved a challenge. I love being productive, and I thought I'd just go kind of explore what that might turn out to be for me at WSU. And it was amazing.
So you had some real perspective going there, given that you kind of grown up in a WashU family. And tell me about when you reflect on your 4 years there, favorite memories, what stands out. Yeah, who was that, Sally?
Interesting. So I was part of two things, I think. One is I was part of the honors program, which is now the honors college. And that was really what I considered my home. So the great thing about that is I got to be in very small groups with people that are in all different majors. So usually you spend a lot of time with people in your own major. And I think that was a really interesting experience because I spent a lot of time at the Honors Center where we all just kind of hung out and got to know each other from all different majors. And I think understanding more than just what I was studying was really a rich experience and helped me understand that different perspectives and different ideas are so important. The other thing that truly shaped my journey and started me on the path to advancement and then to where I am today is my last semester of college. Brent, I had a little bit different experience than most people. So I was a very, very good student. I graduated top three in my class at Washington State. Um, However, I am not a good in classroom learner. I mean, I'm good at it, but I don't love it.
Okay.
I love being productive. I love learning by doing. And so I negotiated that my last semester I would do a 30-hour a week internship for the WSU Foundation and not have to go to any classes. I would just get credit for my internship to finish out my degree at Washington State. So I did not go to one class my last semester and I did a 30-hour a week internship. So at that time, you're going to love this. I thought I wanted to be the editor of a fashion magazine. What I learned in doing that internship was how amazing it was to see philanthropists. And, to me, a philanthropist is anybody who cares about an organization and gives any amount, right? But to see these people who cared so much about this organization and its students and its faculty and its future that it made them happier to give gifts than even the people who were fundraising. And by the way, Brent, I don't know what they were thinking, but they gave me the job of interviewing the $100,000 benefactors for the magazine that would come out. I was 21 years old. I had never done anything like that. And it literally changed my life. 2 days after graduation, I graduated on Saturday. I started my first job in advancement on Monday.
Amazing. I love that story. I was expecting you to say that you worked for the center or some sort of side hustle, but that is like serious commitment. And I hope we've got WashU students listening to see if they can go negotiate that deal during their final semester here.
I got to tell you, and what it's funny because Washington State was one of the first universities actually to have a call center. And I am definitely going to date myself. There was no phone-a-thon at WSU when I was a student. They started it actually probably that very first year that I was working as a development coordinator.
Mhm.
And I was out in the College of Engineering, which was also interesting since I was an English and business major. Um, but yes, I actually not only helped sort of, I mean, I was there at the beginning of that phone-a-thon, but I was the consultant who helped start the Rebel Ring at UNLV.
Amazing. Amazing. So, when you think about the several years that you spent as a development officer, any, I don't know, favorite memories, poignant experiences, visits, donors that stand out that you're comfortable sharing?
I think, yes, a couple. So first, I would just say my first reaction when I was in the internship before I got the job, and in the internship, I was doing more on the PR Marcom side. My first thing I said was, I could never. I said, what are all these people doing? Oh, they're raising money. I said, I could never do that. And then my first job there right after college was doing exactly that. And I found that I loved it so much. And I was in the College of Engineering and Architecture. It's kind of an interesting combination at WSU. And uh, engineering, of course, very lucrative with donors and all of that. Architecture um, was probably not paid as much attention to. So again, Miss Negotiator here, I went to the director of development and said, you don't really have time for architecture. Why don't I take that? And with that, I got to meet, I mean, one of my favorite people in the world um, was Jerry Duran. I hope somewhere, I think he's in Montana now. I hope somewhere he's listening to this. My favorite guy, so he was one of the partners at the architecture firm that designed all the Microsoft headquarters, the Nordstrom buildings. I mean, this was Seattle, right? And he was so fascinating and treated me like, well, frankly, Brent, like I knew what I was doing, which I didn't. I mean, I really didn't. And that kind of confidence boost and builder is it really helps change the trajectory of your life. The other thing I got to do was I got to work with the amazing Connie Kravis. So I know you had asked me a question before we were talking about mentors, so hopefully I'm not jumping ahead, but Connie, okay, so most people know Connie Kravis as the Senior Vice President for Advancement at University of Washington, which is where she retired from several years back. She was the Vice President for Development. I don't know exactly what her title was at WSU, but she ran the whole development program. She was one of the youngest people to do that. And I just learned by watching her. She was amazing. I mean, she was like my boss's boss's boss. I mean, like, I was so far down the totem pole, but I just learned by watching her and the way that she cared about people and the way that she was not afraid to talk to anybody. And I just took my cues from that. And one of the things I got told by an alum in one of that first job there is he said, you really have moxie. And I said, I don't know what moxie is. So we had a conversation about that. And it is funny how things work out, right? Because that actually is now one of Bryant Group's core values.
Amazing. I love that. So I guess for everybody that hasn't had the opportunity to work with Connie, what are the one or two things that if we could all observe her in action at that time that we would have noticed and maybe tried to work into our own repertoire, if you will?
Absolutely. And I am a bottom line person. So I'm actually going to start with sort of the results of who she was. And when I say that, what I mean is at the time, I think there were only 35 or 40 fundraising professionals at WSU. So you just think like how much programs have grown since back then. But of those people, I think it was something like 65 or 75% became vice presidents of advancement or business owners or consultants. Like, and that takes amazing leadership. And it's one of the ways I got on my leadership journey. So I've really thought about like, what did she do? Because we're very passionate about great leadership here and helping people be great leaders. And one of the things she did was she allowed everyone's, not only allowed, encouraged and invited everyone's voice at the table. So all 35 or 40 of us would get around a table once a month. We talk about strategy, we talk about donors, everyone from all the different units. Again, I was so green. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I've never been one who's afraid to speak up. So, but I was taken seriously. And she encouraged and invited that. That was one thing. Another thing was the way that she worked a room. She was so comfortable with people. She really cared about them. She really cared about who they were and what they were passionate about. And it makes it really easy to introduce yourself to someone that you don't even know if you're thinking more about them than you're thinking about yourself. And that's who she was.
I love that. I love that. We'll make sure that she hears that from you as well. So you start working with the alma mater. You then have a couple of other fundraising positions, but then very early on become Dean of Institutional Advancement at Marymount California University and had a good run there. That was a huge leap early in your career.
It was interesting because I was very blessed and fortunate to become a chief advancement officer while I was still in my 20s. And again, sometimes it's really good to just not know what you don't know. And I just figured I could do it. And it was a very small program. It was definitely the best way to get started as the leader of a program. I I the president there trusted me, let me run the show, let me run my own show. But it was interesting because when I started, he said to me, Brent, he said, you've never been the leader of the program. You've led people and you've had teams, but you've never been the leader of the program. He said, it's a lonely place to be. And you are not, who are you going to talk to? Who are going to be your mentors? Who are you going to connect with? And honestly, Brent, I have to be honest, I kind of just was like, I'll be fine. I've always been very independent, but he was right. It is lonely at the top. It's not appropriate to be talking to your team about some things that are stressing you out or when you're trying to figure something out. So, having a mentor and all of that is really important. The other thing going into that job is so I'd worked with Connie at Washington State. I had moved to Seattle and I worked with a leader who was the opposite of Connie. So I got to learn what really great leadership looked like. And then I got to learn what really not good leadership looked like. And again, we're all broken people. We all have our issues. And I think this leader's issues were coming out at work and I was constantly feeling blindsided. And that was the time where I decided I'm going to figure out this leadership thing. So I had the job at WSU and then I had a job in Seattle. And then fortunately, I got recruited to another wonderful leader at the University of Puget Sound. And her name was Beth Herman. She was amazing. Um, and seeing those contrasts helped me start to become the leader I wanted to be. But as you have already pointed out, having a mentor when you are in that first big leadership position is everything. It's when you start a business, you need a mentor, at least one, if not more than one. When you become a leader of a program, you need a mentor. It's new.
It's so timely. Last weekend, I was a speaker at my alma mater, Brown University's football career day. And it was a really fun moment for me because at that same career day in 2002, in February, I met an alum who took me under his wing, helped me with my resume, started making introductions. There was no promise, there was no career path. He was not going to give me a job, but he just was willing to help out. And that led to the next meeting, which led to the next meeting, which led to my first job, which then, as we all experience, you have this cascading right set of dominoes that start to fall. And it was really neat kind of being there and addressing the team, because that was the message. Like, the odds that you get a job today are zero, but the odds that you might make a connection that can lead to a follow-up call, that can lead to a referral, that can lead to some advice, that can point you in the right direction, that could change the trajectory of your life, is like 100% if you show up and make the most of it. And so that's been a recurring theme in every conversation here, just the importance of mentorship. And also, even like, some people brought up the fact that sometimes mentorship sounds too heavy. It sounds very formal. It doesn't need to be that formal. And I think that was another highlight, that, of the session, that just on the spectrum of mentorship, there is, I am your personal board of advisors. We are going to talk quarterly and really be a mentor. And then there's also somebody who's just willing to, make a connection, and that can compound as well.
I am so glad you said that, Brent, because it just brought back a flash of something that Connie Kravis did for me. I think if you ask Connie, was she my mentor? I don't think it would ever probably occur to her, right? But when she got the job at the University of Washington, I was going to be in Seattle. So I called her and asked her if she had time for a cup of coffee. And she'd only been in the job maybe a year. And she agreed, and we sat down for a cup of coffee. It was great to catch up. But the thing that made the biggest impression on me was, I said, Connie, how do you get your arms around a job this big? And she said, you don't. You put your arms around the piece that you need to deal with that day, or the piece you need to focus on for that week. You don't try to do it all or be all things to all people at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, look, there's almost maybe an advantage to scale, in that when you get to a certain organizational size, it's literally impossible to even try. Whereas when you're in a small business, or, entrepreneur like you have no choice. And then you've got to figure out how to extract yourself from some of that minutia over time.
Yes, in fact, you and I need to have a conversation offline so I can get even better at that. I've got such great people, and I've gotten out of a lot of things and more focused on working on the company and some of our, obviously, relationships in the business and those kinds of things. But you're right, and you've been through it. It's
Yeah.
it's something you have to intentionally do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is. And that's probably a whole separate podcast. But I got to learn more about, one, you have this entrepreneurial gene because you're a chief advancement officer in your 20s, and then you decide to become an entrepreneur and launch your own consulting group, probably in your 20s, or early 30s. And then you have this career pivot that I can't wait to get into. But just tell me about hanging the shingle, and taking the consulting role, relative to being in the organizations previously.
So, yes, so when I left Marymount, I started a company that I had for 5 years called Deshane Company Philanthropy Consulting. Deshane is my maiden name. And I will say I loved Marymount with all my heart. I had several good jobs in my life, WSU, UPS, but Marymount was like, for probably 20 years after I said we, when I referred to, like, it was that kind of, it felt like a family. And so it was very, very difficult to leave. The bottom line is, Brent, I was really ill, and no one could figure out what was wrong. And so the kind of schedule that I had to keep to be basically the number two at the it was a college then, then it was a university, but at the college, I it just wasn't, after a while, just wasn't possible. And so I decided, well, if I, it never occurred to me to not work. So I thought, well, I'll start my own thing. That would be interesting. I'd love to do some consulting. And so I started consulting, which probably no surprise to you or probably anyone else, was just as many hours, but it was more flexible. I didn't have to, show up at a certain time and then stay until the end of the event at, 10 o'clock at night. So it was just more flexible, even though it was still a lot of work. I was very, very honored and blessed to have amazing clients. I mean, I had large university clients. I had a fantastic independent school. And I did all kinds of consulting. I did annual giving consulting. I did major gift consulting. I did some interim work, like as the chief advancement officer for a unit at USC or University of Washington. It was fantastic. In fact, I consulted with the University of Idaho on their annual giving program. Guess who the director of annual giving was?
Oh, now I gotta, this is my advancement name game. I don't know. Chris Bingley?
Bingo,
Yes.
bingo. I knew I wanted to work with him from the time that we knew each other, whatever that was, 25 years ago.
How fun is that?
So it is
That's
fun.
amazing. All right. So at no point in this story would I now expect you to say that you're going to become a Mary Kay global consultant for 8 years.
No.
So where did that pivot come from? And you've got to have stories. I've hosted a lot of people who've done a lot of trips and visits and meetings, and I bet you've got some good ones from that time.
Oh my goodness. So yes, a very different kind of pivot. So I had actually at that point, I had shut down my consulting company. I actually sold off a little piece of it, a prospect research piece that we had, and I had joined Bryant Group. So my husband and I, this was, I don't know, I'd have to go back. For a while, there was plenty of work for both of us. He had downsized. So he had a fairly large company. And then we downsized basically to the two of us and, a project-based person. And that was great. It was fine. We were having a great time. And then I think it was in the economic downturn around 2008. You know, in our business, things dry up about a year after the downturn. And I think it has to do with higher ed and hospital budget cycles and that kind of thing. So a couple years into joining Bryant Group, there just wasn't enough work for both of us. My sister is and has been for many years a senior sales director with Mary Kay, and she'd been trying to get me to do that. And I said, it's not my thing. I love what I do. I like big deals. I like talking about big gifts. I like making big impact. I don't see myself selling lipstick. And she said, please look at the business plan. I think your business mind would be interested in the business plan. So Mary Kay has an interesting business plan. It is not a pyramid scheme. It is a network marketing kind of company that is all about relationships and service. Well, I can get on board with relationships and service. And so I thought, well, okay, let me try it. It's something I can do without having to move somewhere or go back to a staff job or something like that. So here's what I learned. I learned how to talk to anyone at any time. Now, I'd learned already some of that, as I mentioned before, but I mean, Mary Kay teaches you to literally walk up to strangers. Now, believe me, I'm not attacking strangers on the street, but you just learn a way of having some courage that you might not have had before. So there was that. More importantly,
Can I
maybe,
ask on that note, is there a technique, a tactic? Can you give us a freebie for those of us who might not get to do Mary Kay training? Like give us something really
Yeah.
specific that we could all go try next week?
Again, because it's about service and relationships is why I could get on board with it. So like we might be whatever, I might be at the grocery store and I see a woman looking at the skincare aisle. And so I might say, you know, I actually work with skincare. I'm a beauty consultant, and we have a meeting every week. We usually want to have a face model, and you get to do skincare and makeup. You know, here's where it is. It's in a public place. You know, would you be willing to come be my face model? And it's amazing. I mean, you wouldn't believe the relationships I have from doing that. And I have to tell you, it was hard for me, Brent. I got to be honest. I was not a person who ever thought highly of that kind of job,
Yeah. Yep.
but I learned not just moxie, more moxie, but I learned that rejection isn't personal,
Yep.
that business is business. And frankly, I learned how to recruit. I recruited more than 100 people into Mary Kay. And I had people on my team who were way more educated than I am. I had a JD, a PhD. I had people who spoke multiple languages. The business model there is actually really impressive.
Yeah.
And so I learned business, I learned how to take rejection, and I learned to be even more brave in serving people, not in selling things to people. Mary Kay is very much about no one likes to be sold, but everyone likes to be served. And we have that same philosophy at Bryant Group. We are not trying to sell our clients anything. It's about how can we serve you and solve your problems.
So give me your all-time favorite interaction, meeting, group, gathering, face modeling, like just during that run, what stands out, most memorable, good, bad, other.
So every year there's a huge conference. Some couple things people probably wouldn't know. Mary Kay's in over 30 countries. Just in the United States alone, when I was in it, there was I think there were between 800,000 and a million beauty consultants just in the US. Um, I don't know, it's something like a $30 billion company. It's crazy. But every year for the US, we had a big conference. And although many of those years I earned all the things, cars, diamond rings, all the things, um, the one that meant the most to me is there's the most prestigious award you can earn in Mary Kay is something called the Go Give Award. And Go Give means that you are the most giving, the most selfless, the most serving person.
Wow.
And I got nominated as one of 12 people out of our 200,000 person conference. I didn't win the big award, but I got nominated as one of 12 people. And being on stage for that was actually the only time I asked my husband to come and be there with me, because selling the most or having the biggest team or those kinds of things, that was not nearly as meaningful to me as getting nominated by my team for being the most selfless.
That is a great story. Thank you for sharing, Sally. And in the meantime, you mentioned your husband. You're moonlighting at the Bryant Group, or maybe just basically working two jobs during that period, but then ultimately decided to take the leap full time.
So my husband, first he started Asked Bryant in 1988 with Stephen Asked, and that was one of the first executive search firms in the country to focus specifically on advancement professionals. So in 2002, they split and Bryant Group became the successor firm. Stephen retired shortly thereafter, still keep in touch with him. Great, fantastic man. Um, when so then I talked about like we did the things. I had my consulting firm, then I joined Bryant Group. So what happened was Chris had always expected to retire when he was 65, but we had gone through that downturn. And so once I had been in Mary Kay, I had done the things, earned the awards. I always had this longing to still be in this industry. And like you said, I actually was doing both. but I had this longing to do this full time. I went to him one day and I said, it's past the time that you had expected to retire. What do you want to do? Do you want to sell the company? Do you want to have someone else run the company? If so, do you want that person to be me? And he said, let me think about it. Yes, I want it to be you. It took that long. I said, okay. So we put together a runway, a pathway to my taking over. And over the next probably 2.5 years, I started running the company. He was still working some searches and in the company. And then in the fall of 2020, we had it all set that he would retire. And then I've taken it from there. He has always truly been the wind beneath my wings. He supports everything that I want with the company. He will give advice or he'll poke holes, but he's always supportive. He was the one who, when I came to him 10 years ago, Brent, and said, we need leadership development. No one was talking about leadership development a decade ago, at least not in our industry. It was just starting to happen. Some really forward-thinking universities were on it, but and some hospitals were ahead of, I think, really ahead of higher ed in that way, but really consultants weren't working in it. There weren't a ton of executive coaches, and we really wanted to focus on team leadership. Like, how do you work together as a leadership team? So he said, great, do it. And we've been doing that for 10 years. But it just worked out great because it was just a really smooth, him being able to go into retirement and me being able to take over. And again, he was willing at that point to keep the company more of a boutique firm. And
Yeah.
that just wasn't my vision. And I said,
Yeah.
are you fine with our growing to impact more organizations? I feel like what we do at Bryant Group is probably maybe the same way you feel at EverTrue. Like, what we do is we get to work with so many organizations that are changing the world. And that's our way of helping change the world. We help make them better so they can do their mission better.
Very well said. So what is Bryant Group today?
What are we?
Yeah. Like what is the core focus? You mentioned leadership, talent. If I'm an advancement leader and I haven't worked with Bryant Group, for example, what is your core focus?
Yeah, it is all about leadership. If I were to describe us in 3 words, it would be leadership consulting firm. The problem with that phrase is I don't know that people know what that means. And so we work through the full talent life cycle and we work to help the C-suite and one level down leaders to either join organizations or to be better at the organization that they are at. So one of the reasons that we started the leadership development line as an executive search firm is that, yes, it's great to help organizations by bringing them leaders. And it's also great to help those leaders get their next position for growth. But if we're not helping people really understand what it means to be a great leader, I don't think we are really fulfilling our mission, which is advancing great leadership to make a positive impact on the world. So we actually have right now 4 service lines. We have executive search, and under that, we have a new program that is for sourcing entry level advancement professionals, especially frontline fundraisers, because they're very hard to find at the salary that the organizations have targeted. We've heard horror stories about people posting and not getting one application. So we have a sourcing service. We have obviously leadership development, and under that is team coaching and individual coaching. And then we do interim leadership service. So if someone needs an interim leader, while a search is going on or that kind of thing, then we do that as well. We will help with anything though in the talent life cycle. We will consult on salary bands. We will consult on staffing structure. We will help you create an onboarding program. It's just that our main things we're known for are leadership development and search.
And so I was going to ask you maybe to imagine the best leader that you've worked with or developed and why you feel that way. People who really stand out. You certainly can feel free to name names, but that's like picking your favorite kids. So I'm not going to ask for that, but in advancement specifically.
Yeah. So of course, I'm thinking of multiple people. I do hate to name names because I will leave someone out
You don't
that
need to. Don't name names, but what are you thinking of? What are the adjectives you're thinking of right now?
someone who really wants their leadership team to push back on them, someone who wants to listen to all opinions, someone who wants to understand the strength of empathy, which I think is very misunderstood. Um, Empathy being, can you see yourself from someone else's point of view? Not sympathy, feeling sorry for someone, but can you actually put yourself in someone else's shoes? Um, I will say it's someone who helps their leadership team understand that their number one role is to have the university or the organization's mission as their number one goal. When you come to a leadership meeting, you have your number one hat on, and that number one hat is the name of your organization, not the name of your department. And I think a good leader helps people understand that. I think a good leader is very clear. They set very clear expectations because clear expectations give people a choice. The choice is meet the expectations or don't, right? But if you don't know what's expected of you, you can't even make that choice. I think clear expectations are really important. I think someone who wants to understand someone else's communication style, their motivations, um, their that they care about people as an individual. Because what makes you happy or makes you motivated isn't going to be the same for the next person. I also think it's someone who can make solid decisions without every piece of information. Because decisions can be good, they can be bad, they can be better or worse, usually is right, where, it's not usually right or wrong, it's just better or worse. But decisions allow you to move forward.
Right.
If they don't turn out to be the best decision, tweak it.
Yeah.
We say here, our philosophy at Bryant Group is ready, fire, aim.
Yeah. I've heard it's more important that you decide than what you decide in many cases.
I agree with you.
And so it's February 2026. When you are in market with your clients, both with leaders you're developing, with university leadership who you're helping recruit and attract new talent, what is top of mind right now? What are people looking for? What's changed? Where do you see things going in 26 and beyond?
Our leaders in advancement need to understand business more than they've ever had to understand it before. They need to understand the finance model fully of their organization, whether it's higher ed or healthcare. The models are different, but also very complex in both ways. How does advancement fit into that? I think that's important. We're seeing more interest in assessments as part of the hiring process, because it is important to know who someone is and how they think, not just what their skill set is. I think people are understanding it is more important to understand head and heart. So the head, how they think, their heart, what their values are, not just the briefcase, what their experience is. We're seeing a lot of that. Obviously, there's just in overall, there's more interest in, do they understand AI? Do they understand technology? How are they working efficiently? Do they understand ROI? So I would say when I got into fundraising, Brent, it was more, how could you build a relationship and be, um, it was just more simple. It was just more simple. And it's very complex today, and people need to understand that complexity.
What's your favorite interview question you like asking people?
Oh, I cannot tell you my favorite one
Okay.
because I spring it on people. I just did this last week and 9 interviews for vice president position. Because I always tell people you've never heard this question before. So I can't tell you that one, but I will tell you my second favorite.
Okay, deal.
My second favorite question, believe it or not, is what is your superpower? And the reason is because what are your strengths doesn't get you the information you're looking for. What is your superpower? Ask someone what makes you different and unique in a special way from all the other people I'm talking to right now. And it does oddly focus people in a different way, and you get a different answer.
I love it. So what's your superpower, Sally?
I would say my superpower is two things. I have two of them. You can have more than one. One is that I have come to understand that in many cases in our industry, I can see things coming sometimes before others. So for example, like the leadership development piece, we were the first search firm that I know of that added that. And now, of course, there's tons of people who do it and do it well. The second thing I'm really good at is I'm really good at seeing what people on my team are talented at and helping them get the rest of the things out of the way and off of their plate, because that's how we rise the fastest and we serve our clients the best.
I love it. Well, Sally, we are wrapping up on time here, but I wanted to just say thank you and also see, if there's anything you just want to share, closing thoughts as we, confront all the change that we're living through in 2026. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brent. This has been really enjoyable, and I just really appreciate you asking me. I think the one thought I'd like to close with is that at the basis of everything we do, not just at Bryant Group, but with every client we serve and in every business, the basis of what we do to make it successful is trusting relationships.
Mhm.
And that to me is the foundation of what we are always looking for, whether we're working in executive search or leadership development or anything around the talent life cycle. That is really important to us. It's important to us internally. And surprise, I have a book coming out on trust. So
Well, I think it couldn't come at a better time because look, I am in the technology world. I'm incredibly optimistic about what's possible with artificial intelligence, about ways that we can reduce the minutia and manual things that have kept us from building trusted, authentic relationships. But at the same time, there is this spectrum where, just like we saw with initial email marketing, right? Dear first name, right? That was personalization not that long ago. And then text message came out, and it was going to be, well, once we can text our constituents, everything's going to be easier. But then what happens? Everyone else texts everyone else about everything, and it just becomes noise. And I think there's going to be a real opportunity to harness AI to elevate the human to human connection, to let us, frankly, spend more time doing what we've been doing the last 45 minutes. But there's also going to be so much investment in trying to fake personalization and trying to fake authenticity. And some of it's going to be really good. But I think it's going to actually result in us all valuing authentic human to human relationships more, because it's going to become rarer and rarer as this noise amplifies.
I agree with that 100%. 100%. And I think people are starting to get hungry for relationships in a way that we haven't been for a while.
Well said. Sally, if people want to stay in touch with you, get connected, I know you're active on LinkedIn, any other preferred method of contact?
LinkedIn is the best. I do check my messages. That's fantastic. And of course, our website is bryantgrp.com.
Well, everyone, I would so strongly encourage you to reach out to Sally, say that you heard her story on the Raise podcast, and I hope that that leads to new relationships in your life, Sally. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate you.
All right, with that, Brent, closing today's episode featuring Sally Bryant, who leads the Bryant Group. Thank you and take care, everybody.